In this video, I'm going to share 5 ways how to price yourself as a freelance designer. I'm going to talk to you about the positives and negatives, and then you can decide what is best for you. If you're new here, I'm Callum. I'm a freelance designer. I've been doing it for about 5 years now, and I've tried loads of different pricing strategies. I've definitely decided what works best for me. So whether you're a new freelancer or you're just thinking about doing it, or you just want it to be your side hustle, this will be a video that's going to help you make more money and just generally work better. My biggest confusion when I went freelancing was money. I had no idea about anything. I was completely clueless, and I was going looking for a lot of answers. Some of the questions I had were things like, what are my skills worth? What are people willing to pay? Am I actually worth this amount? What are other people actually in my industry charging? Now, after a lot of research, I've done ebooks, courses, I've reached out to people, I've networked, I've even posted on Facebook groups. I think I've whittled it down to 5 pricing strategies. I'm just going to go through them all today, and then you can decide what you like best. Now, before we really get into it, I just want to say that we've got to remember that pricing strategies are not permanent. You can try something for a couple of months and then just change it up. If it's not working for you, or you just want to see if there's potential to earn more money in a different way, that's totally fine. And I think clients are also fine with that. If you explain that you're just doing a different pricing strategy, it's fine. And I change my pricing strategy all the time, depending on what the project is, what the client's like, or just generally how much time I have. I will always mix it up. There's never going to be the same pricing strategy that I use across the board. Okay, so number 1, hourly rates. Now, this strategy obviously gets a lot of hate. I think it's kind of seen as the newbie one because that's just generally what people do when they go freelance. But there is definitely some positives that a lot of people just ignore and kind of forget about. So how do we do hourly rates in a successful way? So first of all, you've got to decide what is your hourly rate. And I hear you ask, how do you do that? Let's get into it. It's very simple, but it works pretty much every time. Okay, so I'm definitely not good at numbers, but let me try and explain in a very simple way, and hopefully it makes sense and I've done my maths right. So at the end of the month, you want to ask yourself, how much money do I want to make? So if we say $5,000 or euros, whatever, let's just say 5,000 because it's a very simple number. Okay, so say you want to work about 120 hours in a month, which I think is kind of like the average for a full-time worker. So if you're wanting to make 5,000 at the end of the month, you basically just have to divide that by the hours you're going to work. I think that's roughly about, if my maths is correct, $40, 40 euros every hour. So technically, if you work $40 an hour and you work 120 hours in that month, you're going to make your 5,000. So yeah, you've done it. But as we know with freelancing, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes we can work maybe 50 hours a month, or we can even work more than that. So let's break it down into the pros and cons of doing an hourly rate. Pros: clients are more familiar with this pricing strategy. It's the one that's most used, most known, and they're most comfortable working with. It's also great for really loosely defined projects. If a client comes to you and they're not really sure how much they need or how long the project's going to go on for, it's kind of good just to do an hourly rate until you know a little bit more about it. Also, the longer you work, the more you get paid. So say if you're only working 2 hours, you're only going to make $80 if your hourly fee is $40. But if you're working 2 months straight, which is probably like 240 hours, then yeah, you're going to earn a ton more. Now looking at the cons, there's definitely a limited earning potential. As you can see, in a week or a month, there's only a certain amount of billable hours. So say if you work 120 hours in a month, you're charging that and you make $5,000. There's no opportunity to earn anything over that, because if you're only working the full 120 hours, I think it's like 5 days a week, 8 hours. That's it. A con to the pro that I just spoke about if you work longer, you get paid more. The con is here that if you're really good, fast and efficient at your job, say you've been freelancing for a couple of years, or you're just really, really good. Say I design a logo and it takes me 1 hour, I only get to charge an hour. But say if there was a really terrible designer that, always made mistakes and was really slow, they would take maybe a month to design a logo, and then they can charge 120 hours. And here's me, the good designer, that's only charged an hour because I did it like that. The bad designer makes more money than me. You'll also need to start tracking your hours. And this is a massive con that I just was terrible at. I would always start a little timer and then just forget to turn it off. And then I'd have to do some kind of guessing game, like how much I worked. I find that really frustrating. Maybe you're a little bit more organized than I am, but tracking my hours was just really something that I hated, and it just never really worked for me. Okay, so the next pricing strategy is daily rates. Now this is going to be probably quite easy to talk about because it's very similar to hourly rates, but there is some slight differences here. Again, the pricing strategy will be very similar here with the hourly one, but instead of you figuring out how many hours you want to work in a month, you just figure out how many days you want to work in a month. Again, the pros and cons are very similar to the hourly rates ones. They're not really changing that much. I would say though that one pro is definitely if you've been booked to do a full day, say you do the project and it only takes you maybe half a day or till late lunchtime, you've been booked in for that day rate. So, you can put your feet up, twiddle your thumbs if you want, because you've charged for that day. And if you've done the work in half a day, the client still has to pay for the full day because they booked you for that day rate. And again, this con is very similar to the hourly pricing one, that there's only so many days in a month. Your earning potential is capped. Most people probably only work about 22 days. I think, like 4 weeks, sometimes there's a few days over, but that's it. A little side note that I really, really struggle with is if you're putting your money on your time, that can be really difficult to actually take time off. I'm someone that does do day rates quite often with a lot of my clients. And whenever I take holiday, for example, next month, I will be moving apartment. I'm going to be taking off maybe a week. And I look at it in my head and I think, wow, if I take off 5 days from this day rate, that's a lot of money I'm going to lose. And it can be really hard. Like, it really plays my mind that I'm just constantly thinking about my time and how much it's worth. Okay, we're getting into the more exciting stuff now. Monthly retainers. If you're not familiar with the term monthly retainers, basically it's very simple. If a client needs you, they will just book you out for a whole month and you're basically just on call for them. You might not actually work for them, but they just want to know that you're available for them if they need you. I've personally not done it that much, but I've heard a lot of things from some of my other freelancer friends that it can get messy kind of quickly. Let me explain. So as I said, a monthly retainer is basically where a client books you out for, say, a couple of days a week or a full month. They don't really know if they're going to use you yet, but they just want to make sure that you're available to work for them in case they need you. And as yourself, the freelance designer, if you're booked and you're in this retainer situation with a client, you basically have to turn down any other work. Say another client comes to me and says, hey, Callum, I have this cool project. I can't say yes to it because I've been booked for this other client and I need to be free for them. And it's a positive for yourself because you're booked and you know you're going to be making money because it's already been signed, sealed, decided on. But there has been times when a client isn't happy that they haven't used you. If you've been signed on for this retainer contract, but then the client just ends up not using you, maybe they don't actually start this project that they thought they were going to be starting on, sometimes they can be really tricky about actually wanting to pay you because they basically see that you've not done anything for the whole time they've booked you for, and they think, why should I pay you? Now, obviously from a freelancer view, we know that is like completely not correct because we've turned down business, we've kept ourselves free for this retainer contract, we've turned away people where we can make extra money, and we've kept ourselves free for this client. But in general, the client doesn't look at it that way. Sometimes if they've just not used you, they don't want to pay. They think it's a complete waste of money. And this is why contracts are so important with your retainer. You have to make sure they agree to pay you, whether they use you or not. Okay, so let's get into the pros and cons of this one. A pro, which is for your client, is it's just very simple for them. They can just book you in, they know you've got you on hold, and you're ready for them whenever they want you. For yourself as a freelancer, it's an excellent strategy just to build up a really great relationship. If you're just always constantly work with the same client, every month you're booked in, it's just a really great way to build a great relationship with that client and also just have this constant income coming in. You can also provide so much value for your client. If you've been booked in as a retainer for this whole month, and say you finish the project in 2 weeks, that client still has you for another 2 weeks. So they can kind of find other work for you. They can maybe start something they didn't even think about, or you can even offer more services. It's just a really great way to just expand and develop what you do for that client. You can also offer discounts to your clients. If you're being booked regularly and it's going to be like a long contract, maybe 6 months to a year, you can bring down your prices because you've got this guaranteed work. It takes off a lot of stress from your side. And that's what I've done. I've been booked out a lot now for the same client for about 2 years now. And I really lowered what I charge because I was like, this is great. This is guaranteed work all the time. And I'm just showing to them that I'm grateful for that. Another pro for the client is there's no more estimates. Say if you're doing an hourly rate, the client doesn't really know how many hours it's going to take you or how long you're going to be working for. And in general, if I'm doing something with an hourly rate, I can say, it might take me 10 hours, maybe it'll take me 30 hours, not quite sure. But if you're just booked in for that month, you can say, yep, to book me for a full month is $8,000. That's it. And there's going to be no surprises at the end of it for your client when you say, oh, it actually took me 100 hours instead, so pay up. And I'd say there's only one major con, which I've already spoke about, is just clients might not want to pay you if they've not used you. I've definitely heard this happen to a lot of people in my network, and it can be really tricky. And like I said, you just got to make sure that your contract at the start of this retainer is saying in underlined bold capital letters that even if you don't use me, you don't use my services, if you've booked me out, you've got to pay. Okay, this next one is probably what most successful creatives use that have been in industry for a while. I try and use it whenever I can. It doesn't always work, but in general, that is one I normally start with. The fixed fee. So a fixed fee is a super clear concept to understand. Basically, a client comes to you and says, I have a project for you, whether that's to make a logo, build a website. Now, I could, of course, charge by the hour and say this client says, oi, design me a logo. I get it done in an hour and I've only made, $50. And this sucks because this client has a really great logo because I'm skilled, talented designer, and I've been working 10 years on this craft. They've just paid a very low figure for this logo and they run away and have a very successful business and it's all great for them. But here's me not making any money. The client's happy, I'm not. But if we charge a fixed fee, we take time out of the equation. No longer am I charging for my time, I'm now charging for my skill and my talent. So if we go back in time, this client will come to me and say, I've got a logo for you to design. Before, I would maybe do the hourly rate and yes, make $50 because it took me an hour. But now, if I do a fixed fee, I can say, yep, I design a logo, it costs $5,000. It could still take me an hour to do, but that is my rate for designing a logo. I'm a talented guy, I've done a lot of research, I can do it in my sleep, but that's my price. Now I know this question will come up, lots of designers experience this, and I want to arm you for what to say here. When a client comes to you and says, why should I pay thousands when you do it in a couple of hours? Shouldn't I only be paying a little bit because it's quick and easy for you to do? And all you have to say here is, I studied for years to be able to design a logo in an hour. I read all the design books, I've done the ebook courses, I've watched YouTube videos, I put in thousands of hours to be able to design your logo in an hour. You're not paying for my hour that it took me to design this logo right now, you're paying for all the experience and hours that came before that. And that's it, that's all you have to say. Be confident, say that's your fixed rate, and if they have a problem with it, I'm sure there's another client out there for you. Okay, this one leads me on to the final one, number 5, and it is the most juiciest of them all. And what I notice all the time is that designers do not do this. They do not think about this important thing, and I'm begging you, please start doing this. This is value-based pricing. Now this works just like the fixed fee, but it's got a little twist that I think you'll all benefit from. So we know fixed fee now, you can basically charge a little sum for what you think it's worth. Maybe it's going to take you a month long to do the project, so you just slap on this figure and say, yep, that's my fixed fee, because you just generally know how long it's going to take you, and if it's really difficult to do or it's super easy, that is your fixed fee. But there's another element that goes overlooked that you can add on top of your fixed fee, and that is the value that you bring. Pricing your work by the value it's going to bring your client should be the leading force when you're doing your pricing strategy. Let me explain. Okay, so let's go back earlier to the logo I designed. It took me about 2 hours to do. This logo is going to be a face of a massive clothing brand. There's a really famous celebrity that's actually launching the clothing brand. They're going to put this logo everywhere. Any touch point in the business, the logo is going to be on it. Okay, so we have this t-shirt here. There's no branding on it, no logo. Maximum you're going to pay for it is probably $10, $15 because it's just a plain white t-shirt. But if I put this logo on it that took me 2 hours to do and I slap it on, that brand can now charge $25, maybe $50 because it's branded, and people automatically just go towards those more premium branded products. You can look at it just like Nike. You wouldn't normally pay probably $150 to buy a pair of running shoes, but if it's got the Nike swoosh on it, you're probably closer to considering it. Okay, so what am I getting at here? You need to remember that your work can bring so much value to your client or the brands you're working with. A company or a client could 10 times their profit if your logo is on the face of their brand and it looks incredible. People have built trust with that brand now because they've got this great branding, and it is because of you, it's because of your logo. So you need a little piece of that pie. You can't have that brand or client getting all that money from your amazing work. You need to have a piece of that too, right? So start charging for that. Say my flat rate for a branding project is $5,000. But if I hear this client is a huge international brand, they're going to open up stores everywhere, they're going to do a huge marketing campaign, they're going to print my logo and, I don't know, put it on top of Mount Everest, charge for that because they're going to make so much money from that amazing logo. Instead of now me charging my fixed fee of $5,000, I might now charge $50,000. It sounds pretty ballsy, and I know some people might say, no, I'm not doing that, I'm just going to stick to fixed rate, but you're missing out a lot. That was a lot. Okay, we've covered all 5 now, and there's definitely pros and cons to each. I'm not sure which one you're warming to the most. As I say, I use all these pricing strategies for different situations. In general, I do try and focus on the value I bring, but sometimes I just have a client that only has a certain amount of money and it just works better to do an hourly rate. And like I said at the start of the video, none of your pricing strategies have to be permanent. You can just try something out, and if you didn't like it or you'd rather do it a different way, the next client that comes along, try it out. Do value-based pricing for one client. If there's a client that maybe doesn't have a massive budget, just do hourly and just see which one you prefer and what works best for you. And before we close out this video, I have one bonus tip that I always like to throw in at the end of my videos. And that one today is, don't show your prices online. I know, it's kind of weird because you see a lot of freelance designers with their price packages online. I go on Instagram all the time, a lot of people I follow, they'll have their pricing on their website and sometimes in their Instagram highlights. And it just makes me think, oh my God, you have no idea how much money you're losing. In a really quick way to explain it, if there is a brand that comes to you and they have 20,000 budget in their head, they haven't told you this, but that is what their brand manager has given them. That's the budget that has been assigned to this project. If they go on your website and see you've got 5,000 for a brand package, they're going to be like, great, we can get this job done. And we've just saved $15,000 on our marketing budget. So great, we can use that on something else. But you as a designer, you've just lost 15,000 because you've said, I'll do branding for 5,000. So if you're someone that has your price online, get rid of them now, wipe it from your website. You want to keep a little bit of mystery. You want to hold your cards close to your chest because you never know how much budget that client has. Let them make the first move, find out how much money they're working with, and then you can say, yes, it works, no, it doesn't work. Let them decide. And that's it for today's video. I really enjoyed putting this together and I hope it's helpful. I get a lot of questions about pricing strategies and I know a lot of new freelancers have no idea what they're doing with this stuff. So yeah, I'm glad I can share this with you today. As always, like all YouTubers say, please like this video, subscribe if you haven't, and you can even click the notification bell. It will really help out this channel and just spread this video to more freelancers. And if you enjoyed this video, there is a video here which I posted last time, which is all about 5 brutal truths that I learned as a freelance designer. Anyway, that's it for today. So thank you for watching.